morning. Welcome to the Old School, a podcast over the American education system. It's quirks, it's idiosyncrasies, it's picadillos, possible problems, possible solutions. And so far as we know the solutions, good morning, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Good morning, Herr Miller. It feels like we haven't done the show in a couple of weeks because we haven't done the show in a couple of weeks.
It's been a week and a half, some of it. Yeah.
Yeah, we had one in the bag. We sometimes have one in the bag, so that allowed us to not record last weekend. But how are you? Are you doing all right, sir?
I'm doing all right. But in the interim, since our last time that we were all together, I did something at school I've not done perhaps in 15 years.
Oh. It's a great preamble to a story.
It is a story because a couple of weeks ago, I broke up a fight.
It's been 15 years.
It's got to be close to that. I mean,
you've lived a charmed life. I can't say I mean, my frequency was quite a bit more than that, over the 25 years. Okay, well, let's hear it.
Well, I mean, the problem is that I saw the fight from a distance.
Yeah.
And at first I wasn't sure I was looking at a fight or just a couple of boys just horsing around, sort of a thing.
Okay. It was boys.
It was boys. Yes. Okay. If it was girls, I would have ran in the other direction.
Oh yeah. Finding
an AP or something.
They usually get scratched and hurt and they don't get the signals,
But the thing is I end up sprinting down this hallway and I realized two things. One, it was an awfully damn long hallway to be running down. And two, it's possible I'm too old for this crap.
Yeah.
And I get there and I grab the boy who, for some reasons passing all understanding, was shirtless. And I grabbed him and kind of tossed him aside.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised the boy actually left his feet. And when I tossed him aside, and I got there about 5 seconds before the security folks showed up.
Oh.
But and then they took over things from there, and I was able to have a few moments to catch my breath and reconsider my life's decisions.
Right.
But it was something that was quite unusual. The old statement, the old idea, the old axiom is that kids who don't want to fight at school.
Yeah.
Because they know it's going to get broken up. It just took me a while to get down the damn hallway.
You're a little slow. It's like, when is he going to get here?
We've been doing this for 5 minutes. And so so it's ridiculous. So, but yes. Well, harken back to a younger day when I had to do that with greater frequency. So
that's right. Well, and you have get a little adrenaline rush. Now there are levels of engagement, and I shouldn't have to tell you this, but
sure.
Normally there's a verbal warning before you throw somebody across the room. I was thinking
there was no more verbal, and he spotted me just as I came up on him, and so he had a couple of nanoseconds to internalize the fact that indeed the fight was over and that he was going to be the one tossed aside. The other boy was on the floor, and so he was not in much of a position to argue or to render any defense. So,
okay, well, you did well, and I think that's the roadmap as you go after the person who's winning, and
typically
they don't want to fight two people, particularly somebody like you.
Like I said, they don't want to fight one person, but because if you really wanted to fight, you find an alleyway somewhere outside of school and you hash it out like gentlemen, But
okay,
that's not what they were doing.
Well, this is definitely not our topic for today, is how to break up fights.
Although we could come up with one. We could come up with but that would be low-hanging fruit, perhaps.
I think so. It's beneath our dignity, I would say. Well, very exciting here, Miller. Good start. Where do we
contrast that feeling of combativeness and anger? We come upon the holidays.
The holidays. Oh, that's a loaded word.
It is a loaded word.
So where do we go with that? I mean, there's the build up to the holidays and the lack of education happening. Everybody's squirrely, and it's almost like the teachers are more squirrely than the students at some point, and they're like what Mark Harmon sitting in the gym looking at the scoreboard counting down to summer wearing his Hawaiian shirt.
The thing about the holidays, and it should be said, Although for you, I don't know if it can be said.
With
I
that.
don't have an innate issue with holidays in and of themselves. You find the whole thing a rather exercise in bacchanalian delights. But for me, I don't mind the notion of the holidays. It's the problem is that the holidays tend to have an inordinate impact on the supposed function of schools, which is to educate and do so in a rather dignified sort of manner. Um, I think if it was just the last day of school before fill in the blank holiday, I think it'd be fine. But the problem is that there's a ramp up, and the ramp up affects every aspect of the education process leading up to it.
What does this ramp up? What does it look like, say, for Thanksgiving, for example?
Well, for Thanksgiving, it's a little different than it is for, say, Christmas, because Thanksgiving, what's happening is that teachers are they're trying to put in everything that they can prior to the holiday, with the understanding that kids are not going to study over Thanksgiving.
Right.
And so you certainly don't want to hold anything over Thanksgiving, because there's going to be an inevitable letdown as far as performance and ability to kind of stay on top of things. Now, Christmas, it's a nice break because it's the end of the semester, and it's a more clean cut, as it were. Right. Thanksgiving tends to be messier. And you're trying to cram a lot of stuff in before the holiday. The kids are getting increasingly disconnected with their modus operandi in the days leading up to Thanksgiving. So it's a combination of both of those things which make the job difficult. I wonder, what was your take when faced with the growing ambivalence towards schoolwork in the days leading up to, say, Thanksgiving break?
Well, unlike you, I actually put up a good fight on because I was adamant. I mean, let's face it, school districts now count minutes in the year.
Yes.
We have, down to the minute, which is ridiculous, by the way. But suddenly taking a full week of instruction, essentially, because there's you call it the ramp up, I call it putting on the brakes, and you skid into the wall at the end. But that happens not just once. You mentioned the end of the year. It happens at Christmas. It happens before spring break, which is kind of a holiday in a way, but doesn't have a name like Thanksgiving.
Right. Not a proper holiday.
Yeah. And I mean, you have Halloween, which has its own problems.
Lord knows there's problems.
So think about the time that's lost. And I don't, who am I to say that, our school time is that precious? I know that there's so much inefficiency in schools, pardon my French, that losing a few days to relaxing is a bad thing, honestly. But the occasion does get to me, and it's almost like you go through the same process every year. You do the same little activities. It's November. The kids put their hand with their thumb on the paper and draw a little turkey, and then
not in high school, one would hope.
But, and then trying to connect it to the subject. I mean, I could see Herr Miller donning his pilgrim attire. Have you done that?
I have not done that, and I can't believe you would lump me in so casually to the worst excesses of our profession and the professionals within said profession, because probably more so than the vast majority, I do hold a line. The last day is problematic, and the last day I too seek my mantra in the morning. But but on the whole, you do push forward, and you can. The thing that you notice, whereas before there is at least a semblance of interest and buy-in on the part of the student, that all pretense is gone in the days leading up to, say, Thanksgiving, because, well, they're not there. Mentally, they're on a beach somewhere with a drink that has an umbrella in it. Someplace not at school, surrounded by center blocks and silly posters. So
there's too much excitement. It's like when I go to get the dog food for my dog, he's lost it. He's jumping, running around in circles, and
he's lost all dignity.
That's right. And so maybe we're dealing with that from the teachers and the students as well.
It is funny to see, because typically there is some restraint when teachers leave on the course of any given day at the end of the day, even though many of their cars are pointed outwards.
Oh yeah.
There's usually they're usually not running towards the car. They may be walking fast, but they typically refrain from running.
Well, that's good.
Yes, but on the last day before Thanksgiving, it was a madcap sprint. It seemed. I mean, there were teachers that I have never seen leave on the dot. That on the dot, the door was already locked and the lights were off. I was like, how the hell did they do this? It just ended not 2 seconds ago. How is it that the door is locked and the lights are off already? So,
wow. Well, and I never did that. I mean, I sound like a curmudgeon in almost every way here, but
you are.
as a teacher, I would hang around. I would prepare. I would do anything but leave. I just wanted it to go away. The whole idea of these days, and sitting in a room with high school kids, I'm comfortable to an extent, but it depends on the group you have.
Sure.
And so doing meaningful activities is a part of classroom management, keeping not just keeping them busy, but keeping them engaged and moving forward. But as soon as you sit in a room, your stress never changes. There's a certain level of energy to be in a room with kids of any age.
Sure.
And so I prefer it, just for personal survival and hygiene, to be moving forward with them. And so those little breaks, there's usually some part that it rubs me the wrong way. I'm sitting in a room with students, and sometimes I would say, okay, wait a minute, this is stupid. We're getting back to work here. So I don't like the feel of it, and I don't like the decorations on the walls. I never did any of that. And I talk about a Grinch, at Christmas, and I taught German. So are you going to talk about the Weihnachtsmann and tell stories about Nikolaus and all that? No, I never really did. So they don't know that part of history of Germany,
right?
Those traditions, because I was under protest teaching, and the students could not believe it. They say, "Are we going to exchange gifts?" No. How about a party?
Do we have a party?
Yeah. But the bad thing, and you and I taught at schools where this is, sometimes those were imposed. You're going to have a party and bring food and good cheer. So I didn't like it. I was as grumpy as probably anyone in the building at that point.
Well, because what it's doing is it's taking you out of your rhythm. It's taking you out of your discipline. It's taking you out of your function as a teacher, and creating something that doesn't mean nearly as much as what you were previously doing. What it does is it kind of, and I don't want to overplay this, because I, unlike you, don't have quite the same vitriol against against the holidays. But I think the thing that bugs me the most is the change in mindset and the expectations that tend to go with decorations, announcements over the speaker that kind of lends to it, just everything that kind of is associated with it. I understand the need to observe it. I understand the need to recognize it, but I think there's also value in trying to resist a little bit against the notion of just surrendering completely to the frivolousness, that the kids desperately want,
Well, I'm sure lots of teachers, not including myself, I never did this, showed a holiday film for the only reason that it's a holiday film. It has nothing to do with anything, but that's out there. And it just, I thought that you at least had to make, pretend to connect something to what you're doing, draw something. And but it's hard because you expressed it. The students have tuned out. And so you're deciding, do you want to fight on your hands? Do you want to push forward? I often did. And it was exhausting. So I kind of resented the whole thing, but because
you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting on your own, because typically in a typical class,
right,
there's a give and take. There's more of a buy-in. The kids understand that their function at that particular moment is to be in that class learning that subject. And so therefore they have a role to play in that. Please see the previous 2 episodes dealing with the notion of conversation in the classroom and the efficacy therein. But, at this point, you are doing most of the talking. You keep pressing for the conversation. You keep pressing for discussion, but increasingly you're getting none of it. And if you get any of it at all, it typically is kind of a blithe comment or kind of just a throwaway line that the kids do to kind of let you know that they're still at least listening.
They're still there.
They heard an uptick in the tone of the dialogue. And, oh, there's a question, and then, they'll sit about and try to create something, but you're doing most of the work leading into it.
Well, I'm kind of generalizing. You're in the classroom right now, so you can talk about what you did yesterday, but I'm kind of combining 25 years into some mood and approach to doing things. But I will say that as I matured, particularly in my last years of teaching, I realized there are times when you need to just relax into it. And so give them some written work with very little demanding of the students, and play some appropriate music that I like and they might like. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I had a realistic approach towards the end, but I did have my share of just pushing forward. And the shocked looks, turn to page 65 and I start writing grammar on the board and doing things. And they literally say, wait a minute, we're doing things. It's almost Christmas. What's happening here? They were stunned, and so, but then they grew to expect it. I think I did develop a reputation, and particularly the lack of a Christmas tree or decorations. It took them a while. They went through some stages of grief, and they grew to accept it in time.
I think that's one of the areas that I probably fight the most, is the notion of just capitulating to the trappings of as the various holidays approach. And so, like you, there is not to be found anything speaking of Christmas or Thanksgiving, or it's no reason to do it. I mean, there's plenty of avenues which a kid can enjoy the various trappings of those holidays, but it won't be in my classroom.
Definitely. And there's something, I mean, I don't want to have a religious conversation here, but it was in the back of my mind. We're celebrating a Christian holiday in a public school.
Yes.
Overtly. Be careful. And so again, how many teachers are thinking about that? Very few. But it was in the back of my mind. I didn't like the idea of that. But I take my own baggage to holidays. I don't like any of them. I mean, I'm not a total grump as a parent, but if we could abolish most of them, I would, or forget about them. I will say I like Thanksgiving.
It's because there's food.
Yeah, there's food, and you're around family, football, absolutely. But the others combined aren't as interesting as that. I mean, there are some nice traditions we have at Christmas, so I kind of take that back. I'm being a little bit funny, but not truthful. But spilling into the classroom, I'm not for it. I would, be a terrible principal if I made an edict, that we're not doing any holidays. But I could see myself
rebellion on your hands.
Yeah, but I could see myself doing that. And so normally you're much more extreme in every sense than I am, on this show and in general. but I think I outflank you on this issue.
On this issue, yes, you do outdo me a bit. But again, my issue has not so much with the holidays, but just the idea of the kind of the expectation of a shift of a mindset that takes us away from our primary focus towards something that doesn't have as much meaning to it. So, the end of the semester, I mean, there's with Christmas, there's a couple of extra things that come together to bring about a kind of a perfect storm, not just Christmas, but not just two and a half weeks off, but then also the closing out of the semester, the closing out of grades, the finishing up of the kind of the main gist of requirements for a particular class, and more towards beginning the transition to the next semester, And so, and again, all this stuff, the end of the school year is a kind of an overemphasizing of things that we have questions about anyway, with regards to assessment, but then you add into it the frivolousness of the holidays and Christian or otherwise, all these things do have an impact. And when you consider, and you can listen back to some of the other episodes where we talk about where the infringements on the classroom happen, right, and how often it happens. And so when you consider all those other things, the holidays just become an additional infringement, yet another kind of taking away of time. And again, it's important to reiterate that I don't think that my time in my classroom is so life affirming and life changing that we need to treasure and protect and hold every aspect of it.
Not at all. On the contrary.
But I think there should be some, and I don't know how to say it. I think there should be some effort to try to preserve as much of the class time as possible.
Well, there's a lot of peer pressure happening among the faculty. If they could just send a note around that, that Mr. Miller would prefer not to have any fun in his class, something like that. Please bear with him and humor him. We're talking about high school, and that's our lens. But I know that there's something in the elementary school that might even be more heightened. The week before a holiday, particularly the last days. I'm an educational consultant. I visit schools, and it's part of what I do, part of my business. And typically during that week before Christmas, before any type of a break, they're not interested, in scheduling anything, because they say you're not going to see school here.
Yes.
You're going to see something else, but not school. And so I think that it's more pervasive at that level. You would think, wouldn't you?
There is a ray of light, a ray of hope, however.
Oh,
because I was talking to my daughter, the little child that lives in our house.
You shouldn't do that while I'm drinking coffee. I almost lost it.
And so I asked her about when I picked her up yesterday. I asked her, I said, "How was your day?" And she goes, "We played and we talked about Thanksgiving, just all the typical things that you might imagine." I asked her, I said, what about your one teacher? What did y'all do? She goes, "We worked." I said, "Really? What'd you do?" She goes, "Well, we were spelling words, and then we were writing stories." And so I was like, huh. I was surprised. I assumed that whatever exists in the high school level on these rather festive occasions is magnified considerably at the elementary level. But at least with the one teacher, she held the line a little bit on the last day of school. So there is perhaps hope, perhaps reason to be optimistic.
Well, I never expected to hear that. We should follow up on that. I know this is a person with a name that you could find out. We don't need to reveal here live, but I suggest that we reach out to her, you as a parent, and say, I appreciate that your diligence, and strangely enough, I support you on this. We have a modest podcast, and occasionally we bring on guests. I'd like to talk to her.
Yeah,
wouldn't that be fun? I mean, you don't know her, but maybe it's a sign, maybe, that we have a kindred spirit out there, one at least.
And she's got a much harder job trying to toe the line. I don't know, although I don't know. Maybe the kids at that age haven't been ingrained in the tradition enough to expect just a blow-off day. But there is something quite admirable that she was doing work yesterday.
Yeah, I think that the younger kids scare easier, and they fall in line. The high school kids are going to revolt. It's not fun to be a minority of one on an issue.
Yes,
and the other teachers just shake their head. They did with me. So, or
maybe the situation, at least in that school, is better than we feared.
Maybe so. Maybe there's more enlightenment out there. I'm not used to people agreeing with us. That's why I'm a little stunned. I'm trying to process it right now.
Well, maybe as we round this thing out, maybe that's something we can consider for the future, to see if, and of course, God bless it, we've been talking about having elementary school teachers on this podcast.
It's a standing joke now. You practically announced it once.
I did practically announce it once, only to be crushed in our efforts to do this. So, well, maybe let's just put a lot of qualifiers to the notion of an elementary teacher talking about this. Never going to happen.
We wouldn't know what to say, because we'll just look stupid, as we're so disengaged from that world.
We would have to just let them take the floor and say, tell us, speak to us. enlighten us.
I like that. Tell us what's really happening, and your theorizing probably doesn't apply. We need that occasion. We get that from our wives, like, all the time. So maybe we need to hear that from a teacher.
We do. Maybe, yeah. Maybe this will be good for us. Maybe we will grow and change and become better.
As he laughs.
You're the one laughing. I'm not laughing. All right. Well, heading off into holiday delights and food and festivities. I shall bid you adieu, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
And auf Wiederhören, auf Wiedersehen, Herr Miller.